Well, good morning, good morning. Good morning to you. And yes, it is Saturday again. And if you can hear the sound of my voice, that means you're listening to another edition of the Reading Circle with Marc Medley, heard live on Saturday mornings from 6 o'clock a.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. And then we follow up from 7 to 9 with the Good News in Song in the M&M Hour and in the Martha and Friends Hour, which is the gospel music. But we kick off things here at 6 o'clock a.m. with the Reading Circle, where I bring you what's going on in the world of reading, in the world of books. My guest is already on the line. I'm always thrilled when they call in. He or she calls in ahead of time, so that way I'm not sitting here wondering, did something happen or did something else go on whenever I did not see the green light light up. So that light has lit. She is awaiting her introduction. But as you know, we always open off the show letting you know what's going on with the weather, as well as reading from two passages out of two different books. That kicks the show off on a positive flow. It gets my voice all warmed up, and I'll introduce the guests, and then we are on our way into our interview. All right, very quickly before I give you the weather, there is an app for the Reading Circle, and I need folks to download it. The last time I looked, 38 people had taken up my offer and downloaded the app. But if you go to iTunes or Google and put in the Reading Circle or Amazon, you'll be able to download the Reading Circle app. So I ask those of you in the listening audience, please download the app. It'll keep you up to date what's going on with the Reading Circle. You could see the upcoming guests. You can catch the schedule of the show, all the social media sites, as well as, again, just keeping up with what's going on with the Reading Circle. As I said, we read from two books. We've been reading from these same two devotionals for years now, and the likelihood of you hearing any passage twice, seeing that the show is only on a Saturday morning, is slim, because it is a perpetual. It doesn't have a year associated with it, only to the dates. So today, for March the 15th, out of the book What Can Happen When We Pray, in my distress I cried to the Lord. Today's prayer: I love you, O Lord, my strength. Guide me as you guide the sunrise and direct the stars. Keep me in your holy, precious care as you care for the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. In my distress, shield my mind and guard my heart. Lord, I hurt. Hear me, help me, heal me. Lord, I've lost my way. Hear me, help me, guide me. Lord, I need your guidance. Hear me, help me, show me. Today, Lord, this hour, this moment in my distress, hear me, Lord, help me, Lord, heal me, Lord. Amen. Today's reflection. From the lion's den, God heard Daniel's prayer. When the Israelites cried out while in slavery, God heard and delivered. When my father died suddenly, something within me closed. When my sister died in her sleep 3 years later, something within me cracked. But when my son died of suicide at age 26, my heart broke. In my distress, I called to the Lord. I cried to my God for help. God heard me. God helped me. God healed me. There is no place we can be where God won't hear us. There is no situation so great that God can't help us. There is no sorrow too deep that God can't heal us. Today, Lord, this hour, this moment in my distress, hear me, Lord, help me, Lord, heal me, Lord. That's from the book What Can Happen When We Pray, from the book by Iyanla Vanzant. Until today, for March the 15th, Iyanla says, I open my heart and mind to be aware the power to change leads to a powerful change. Just in case you missed yesterday's message, here is another perspective. No matter what is going on in your life at any given time, there is only one thing you can do. No matter how you feel in response to a specific experience, circumstance, situation, or memory, there is always one thing you can do. In every or any situation, regardless of the mitigating factors, you can always change your mind. If what you are thinking, saying, or doing in response to any person or experience is not bringing you peace, change your mind. If your mind is flooded with memories and thoughts of a pain-filled past or a not-so-promising future, change your mind. You can do it, just like that. When you change your mind, the things you've been thinking about, worrying about, crying over, running from will look completely different. It may not be that anything in the actual picture changes. However, Your changed mind will alter the way you see it. If you are serious about creating a change in your mind, here are a few tips. Do not insist that people be who you want them to be. Do not insist that you are someone you are not. Do not insist that you can do things you cannot do. Do not insist that you know things that you don't. Do not insist that you will do things that you won't do. Do not insist that everyone is wrong about you. Do not insist that you are right. Whenever you are insistent about something, you create an attachment. Breaking that attachment creates disruption in the mind. Until today, you may not have realized that you can always change your mind. Just for today, be devoted to changing how you think about things, how you see things, and what you tell yourself about everything. Changing your mind about anything or anyone transforms how those things or persons impact your life. Today I am devoted to changing my mind about things and about myself. It is 6:08 a.m. We are right on schedule. As I said, that was from Iyanla Vanzant with Until Today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guest this morning, who has an interesting first name. Her name is E. Wade, and E is spelled E-Y. And she says in her bio, knowing me as a writer and author is like cracking an egg's shell in the air and wondering how far the splatter will spread. Wait, that's kind of like knowing me as a person. I'm like all over the board and always working on 3 to 5 projects at any given time. I have no favorite spots to work, and my view tends to be pointed at the keyboard. When an idea comes into my head, I just flow with it. I haven't been able to conform my writing to any specific pattern. I am more than often working on one story, and the characters from another will just be dying to get my attention, and I have to go into their world. I tend to write in various genres, from fiction to picture books using pen, same one for the past 11 years, in paper, a laptop, and as a newly favorite, the Word program on my cell phone. I have found I can write anywhere with that little contraption, and my focus is intent. Has to be with those tiny keys, right? And then I just email it to myself and copy-paste it into my manuscript. Before becoming a self-published author, I followed the rules, wrote outlines, character, backstories, did the word counting, queries, and everything. I even had an agent once. Unfortunately, he was a horrible choice. Directed me away from Ballantine Books, wish I knew I'd have known who they were, who wanted the perfect solution, and straight into the corrupt hands of Publish America. What a crock. After that fiasco, I was so humiliated I couldn't write. Fought and had my rights returned, and now I am back. I tried the querying again, but became frustrated when it seems the agent's rules are so varied, too confusing for me. Not to mention the rejection letters can be soul-crushing. I received a lot of positive reviews from The Perfect Solution when it was first published, and yet when I began querying, one agent informed me no one would like the book, and yet it deals with negligence in the child care system. Oh boy. So off I ran on my own. I have recently put 3 novels, 3 picture books, and a creative nonfiction book into the Amazon and Smashwords system. I think e-publishing is one of the greatest inventions God has given to the world. I would advise any author to go that route when they have something they feel strongly about. Oh, and to let you know, I do have a stable life. I am the always single mother of 3 daughters who are all grown now, 27, 25, and nearly 20 years old. Homeschooled them on string and a prayer. Though it may seem as if I'm a bit scatterbrained, I was able to school them into college by the age of 17 and 16. The 2 eldest have graduated. Yes, I am the drooling proud lovey of a baby boy named Jet Parker Ellington. Before being destroyed by Hurricane Ike, I lived in a nice home and owned a home-based child care center, and that's me and my writing life in a nutshell. Well, we're going to welcome to the Reading Circle microphones E. Wade. E, good morning.
Hello, how are you?
I am well, thanks. Wow, that's an interesting bio. It's going to give us a lot to talk about in the next few minutes. That's right, folks. You are listening to the Reading Circle with Marc Medley. But of course, if you're listening to the show, you knew that, didn't you? All right. My guest is E. Wade. And E, when you emailed me, you said, do I have any specific questions I'm going to ask? And I tell you no, because it's very conversational. But there is one question that always kicks off the show, particularly for authors and writers. And the question is, where did all the writing begin? Was this something you did as a child in grade school, high school, when you went to college, or when you got in tech school? I mean, when did you start writing? When did you decide, you know what, I think I want to be an author?
To be an author started more or less when my children were young, and they would come up with little questions, and the questions would make me want to just write a story for them. But when I decided I would write was during public school. You know how they make you write these little essays when you come back from the summer, or what did you do your summer? And I had to make up something because there were certain kids in the house, and I was with my mom, and we did nothing. So I had to make up these stories, and I would get A's, thinking, the people thinking that's what we did. And I decided, I can just write,
That's interesting, because I remember those assignments as well. And I also work in the school system. I work with children, and in many cases, the first, few days back in September, that is the assignment the teachers give, is write about what you did this summer. But what made your answer interesting was like, well, we really didn't do anything, so I made stuff up. What type of things would you, if you remember back, what type of things did you make up in those essays?
Oh, that we would take little road trips and things we did on there. I remember that, not the detail, but I remember it was just always some kind of exciting road trip when actually we just stayed home and sat on the porch doing nothing.
That's, what, you just in those first couple of minutes of just talking to you, you gave me a whole different thought in terms of, we take for granted that everybody had a wonderful, interesting summer. And for some people, like for me at this age, at this point, maybe not as a kid, but at this age, for me, if I could sit on the porch all summer long, that would work for me. But as a kid, I'm quite sure, it's kind of, especially if you're seeing other children or hearing other children do other things, it kind of makes you wish, I wish we could do those too. But the other thought I just had was, how many other kids in the class were doing the same thing?
Because that's true. But you just had to get through it. And
this is true. So, as I went through your bio, you said you homeschooled all of your children.
Yes.
And you just said a couple of minutes ago, your writing actually kind of started from, of course, in grade school when we did those little essays. But then you said for your children, you began making up stories for them. How did that go?
Oh, it went really well. Like I have a couple of books right now, 3 picture books out. And one day my daughter was asking me about the sun, hugging the sun. She wanted to hug it, and I had to tell them how hot it was and about eclipse and everything. So I wrote a little picture book, and it's called Who Will Hug the Sun? And it's basically about the sun reaching out and trying to get things to hug. And it talks about, rain and the eclipse. And you learn a little bit of science, but you also learn that everybody needs to be hugged, that kind of thing.
Did you actually publish those, or those were works that you had just in the house for the kids?
I've published them now.
Oh, so even though they started out that way, you actually did ultimately publish them?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what was the homeschooling experience like? I mean, it's kind of like the kids stay home during the school day and you do all the teaching?
Yes, it was more like every day was just an experience thing. You just learn from everything you do, and that's how we did. When I first started, the first 2 daughters were in school. They were in the public school, 4th and the 6th grade, and I didn't like it, and there was so much, I was all in the PTA and all that, and I learned so much about the school system and things I just didn't like, and I took them out. And the youngest daughter, she never went to public school. And then, she stayed home all her life, and then she went on to college. Well, she's in culinary school at the moment.
How did you know what to teach? How did you know what curriculum you wanted, or what did you need them to know?
Well, at first I did the same old school thing, get up at a certain time and we did everything kind of traditional. And then after that, we just picked topics we wanted to learn and things we wanted to know, and that's how we went. A little bit of unschooling, schooling, And whatever I didn't know, there's libraries, there are people. You just get help when you need help.
That's right. Again, I'm fascinated by that. That's why I'm asking the questions about that part of it until, right before we get into the whole thing of your books. So, because that fascinates me because, learning to me is always, it's not just a matter of going to that particular building and sitting in a classroom. I think every day we ought to be able to learn something new. I don't care how small it is. It doesn't have to be something big and monumental. It can be something like I said in the first couple of minutes of talking to you, you gave me a whole different perspective on that little summer essay. And it just never dawned on me that somebody might actually make up their little summer essay that I've always took for granted that they wrote what they did. So if they sat on the porch, they wrote about sitting on the porch. And if they went somewhere, they wrote about that. It never dawned on me that, you know what, I might have had a child that sat on the porch and said they went to Europe. I don't know. But
because I've always told my daughters that whatever somebody else knows, you can learn, because more than likely they learn from a book. You get it from a book, you go read it, you try it, you do it, you fail, you try something else.
That's right. And that is very good advice, because for me, and now since, of course, the invention of the internet and all that stuff, I just go to Google. But I still go to the books and everything as well. But that's the kind of mind I have in terms of, if there's something out there and I want to do it, I'll find out how. And whether it's from a person, whether it's from a book, but most of the time I will go through and I'll start reading about whatever I'm researching. Okay, do this, do that, and then we'll get the job done. So, okay, now in terms of now, and maybe this is a good lead into whenever you, because I'm reading the bio about the fiascos with the various publishing companies, this, that, and the other. When you decided, you know what, I want to have my work published for real, I want to actually be a published author. What did you do in terms of homework, or did you do any homework, or kind of what led into these fiascos?
Well, with the agent and all that, I did all that, the regular work, searching out, and I found someone whose father was an agent, and he took the first two books I wrote. I wrote them at the same time and within a year, and he shopped them around, and he came up with two places that wanted them, and one Valentine books, and I didn't know who they were when I just got in a computer, and I searched them, and I couldn't find them, so I was like, oh, they must be bogus, and so I didn't go with them. I went with the other one, because the person in Valentine book wanted me to change the ending of a book, and the agent said, no, I don't change your ending. But now that I know who Valentine is, I'm like, oh, man, I could have just beat myself.
Yeah, they're huge.
But then they weren't, I didn't know them, because it was like in 1999. So no, I didn't know who they were. And when you're single, you got a lot of stress in your head, and I was like, oh, I must want to be a writer. Oh, as a matter of fact, I had got this a life game, and played it with my daughter. And it was the first time I'd ever played the game, because my mom wasn't into games.
Right.
So the first card I gotten was be the American, like the greatest American novel for their amount of money. And I said I was going to keep it, and my daughters were like, no, you can't keep it. It's part of the game. And so I put it back in there, and then my mom had a stroke, and I brought my daughters to her town to go stay with her. And on the way back home, that same little card was sitting in the driveway. And I was like, oh, that must mean I need to be a writer. And I still have the little card, labeled it and mounted it on something, and I still keep it in my purse, because I'm going to be the American. I'll write that great novel sooner or later.
That's right. And it's funny, because words are so powerful, especially when you have them written. And it's interesting that you kept that and framed it, because that really kind of acts as your vision or your goal.
And the same little story, the Essence magazine had put out a call out for what's your faith or whatever, and I entered that little story in there, and it was put in their magazine. So I have all that framed, and sooner or later, the name will get out again.
That's right. It's going to happen. Well, I tell you what, we are going to share some more information with you. Again, an opportunity for you to get closer to your radio or to your speakers, or get on your computer and tell somebody E. Wade is on the air with me, and that the reading circle is on, and it is about 6:24. So we're going to go ahead and share this information with you and come back to the interview with E. Wade as we're working our way up to how she actually published. Because that's what we're talking about now is her publishing experience. So stay there. Don't you dare move. Many of the listeners want to be authors themselves, or either they're figuring out or they're doing their research on how do I go about writing a book. So in many instances, our conversation really winds up helping them because they get ideas from each author that comes on each week. So a lot of times you're helping people and don't even realize it. The Reading Circle is on the air. And right before the break, I was saying that people are listening that you're helping, and you may not even realize it. And it sounds like you were beginning to say something.
Oh, yeah. On Facebook, I decided I would start a Facebook group, and it's called The Writer's Tool, because there are so many questions that I had wanted to know.
Right.
And so that's what The Writer's Tool is. It is that we answer questions and that kind of stuff. And it gives out a lot of information.
So, well, interestingly enough, you had positive and negative experiences. And sometimes when we're going through the negative experiences, we don't understand why we're going through them. But at the same time, if you use them as a great lesson learned. So even though you had like some of the interesting and negative experiences with the agent and the publishing company, so forth and so on, my guess is you probably learned from that.
Oh, yeah, I learned a lot. That publishing company had said they would do editing, and they really did none. And I should have known when the first time they sent me a galley, they left off the first 97 pages. And but I've learned, you need to take your time. You need to get things edited before you get into anything else. And so my main reason for getting published, publishing is out for this history book I wanted to get out. And it's a interracial history book. It's the only American history book I've seen where there's all races, applaud everybody. And that's how I taught my daughters history, because we were doing a Black history thing, and my youngest daughter wanted to know, well, when was white history and where was everybody else's history? And so we just put it all in. It started off as a homeschool project and ended up being a book called Beads on a String. And so it's a really good history book, I think, because every race is in there.
Now, that was Beads on a String?
Mm-hmm. It's Beads on a String, America's intertwined, racially intertwined biographical history.
Now, was that your first work that you actually published?
No, the first work was called The Perfect Solution, and that's about a daycare.
Okay.
It's really about a 3-year-old who was stalked, and his teacher made a mistake and gave him to the stalker. So it's got a lot of nonfiction in it, things I know because I worked in the child care system for nearly 40 years. So it has things in there that I learned or saw.
When black would not be asked to get back. When brown.
Well,
but anyway, that's what it's about.
So what you're saying, the experiences may or may not have been real, even though it's a fiction story.
Yeah, it's a fiction story, but a lot of the incidents in there
really happened.
Yeah, not the stalking part, but the giving away children by mistake. And, people usually get their children back, before they really get out the door. But sometimes, like one incident where the rooms are too crowded and you have new people working in there and you don't know who's coming in and out.
Right.
Things can happen.
Oh, yeah. And in 2014, that could be deadly. But now it's interesting in terms of the concept, because now, again, anytime we hear stalking, you think of, someone stalking an adult. But to say, a 3-year-old was stalked, now that's different.
It is. It's just a woman who decided she wanted a child, and she saw this child, and she liked him, and she wanted him. And, we do things we don't know. We should know better, like putting our child's name on a shirt and all the things, like the name of their daycare. And eventually people know, they follow every little hint, and they can tell where your child goes and that kind of stuff.
That's
and in daycare, when I was in the public daycare, how they put the child's name in front of them on tables,
right? So
that you can know they learn their name and all that stuff. And this person, she went to his daycare, learned how his little daycare worked and all that, and before you knew it, she went there and stopped.
Wow. So she would actually be somewhere kind of like lurking and looking, and because you'll have to get the book. I'm not going to give you the ending. I'm tell E now, don't give the ending because we want you to get the book. And the title of that one was again?
The Perfect Solution.
The Perfect Solution. So you were able to come up with the concept for that particular story by working in the child care arena.
Yes.
And then you put that down to paper. So when you received, now was Perfect Solution, was it an actual paperback or either a hardcover or was it just ebook?
When I first published, they were paperback books.
They were paperbacks, okay. Because one of my, I guess you can call them standard question, if you will, is what was it like for you whenever that box of books arrived on your door?
Well, you just had, it was really exciting. You get the book and you get to feel the cover and all that. And as a matter of fact, I have another little part of the publishing company because after I published the books, ebook, by myself, I found a publishing company, and I'm with this small publishing independent company, and it's called Ink and Beans Press. And so they've republished the book for me and has a whole new cover, and it's just so gorgeous. And it's just a nice, this publishing company, we work hand in hand. So if I have any ideas, and we change and we do all that kind of stuff. So I am with a little publisher now. Except I still have a few books that are self-published still with just me, and I have some with them.
So when you first received your copies of The Perfect Solution, and it was by E. Wade, or did you use a pen name?
Well, you know what? E is my pen name.
Okay.
Until I change my name, which is what I want. I have never liked my first name, so I'm not even going to tell you what it is.
So, okay, so E.Y. is not, or E rather, is not your original name.
No. E is, when I did the homeschool was E.Y. Wade because two of my daughters and myself, our middle name starts with a Y, and the youngest daughter is an E. And the daycare, homeschool is called E.Y. Wade's Black Butterfly. And in my opinion, I would be nothing without my children. And I really, like I said, I really didn't like my first name anyway. So that's my name.
Okay, because I told you whenever we talked prior to the interview, I was going to talk a little bit because I find it to be an interesting name. I wasn't sure when we first contacted each other by email whether it was E.Y. Wade or E. And so this morning when we talked, you said it's E. I said, okay.
Yeah, it's E we got because, that. That's all our names.
That's an
They're
interesting
Y, but you pronounce it
E. Wade. All right. Well, that's who my guest is this morning. We're talking about her work. Her first work was A Perfect Solution. Actually, she had other work prior to that, but that's the one she published. And so when you moved away from Perfect Solution, what was your next book after that?
It's called The Women of the Hill. It was Yes, Sam Takes Care of Me, but it's a series now. So I'm working on the second book in the series. But it's The Women of the Hill, and it's about 5 women with a relationship with the same person. 5
with the same one?
Basically.
That's another interesting. Where do you get? Okay, the first one really made some sense to me in terms of you working in the industry. Okay, now you've branched out and you've come up with this concept of 5 women interacting with. I'm assuming that's one male.
Relationship.
There's a relationship.
It's one male, but as you read the book, you realize that this one person is Uncle Sam. So it's 5 women dealing with government assistance and how people think that it's such a good thing or that someone's stealing from them because they're on the system. There are different reasons that you end up being, needing food stamps or medical.
Right.
And it's because I was on it and I had friends who were on it at one time in our life and the different things that happens while you're on it. Like I have one friend, she's gone to school to be a nurse, and they kicked her off the system because they said she was in school too long. Rules.
Right.
Their rules are crazy.
Right. Yeah, it's like once you get involved in any of that, you really do have to follow the rules if you want to keep it. And, it's like anything else in life, I guess. But sometimes the rules seems like they're crazy, though.
Yeah, because, you lose. Either which way you lose. Like if you get off and you have little children and they might not eat. But if you get a little job and your kids might not eat.
Right. I mean, like I said, some of the rules seemed a little odd. I mean, when you look at the welfare system where it's set up where you cannot have a man in the house and all that kind of stuff, you think it would be just the reverse. That, okay, we want a male there that's going to help you. Now, we'll assist you with his assistance, but to just take the male out of the picture altogether or take some type of work. Okay, you know what? You get some type of a job, part-time job, whatever it is. You make X amount. We'll supplement and add to that. But I mean, just to say, okay, now that you've got a little job that's probably not be paying too much, we're not going to give you anything. Some of the rules do seem a little off.
Or once when I moved in different towns are a little different, especially in Texas. I moved to one little town, and it was my first time moving from where I was born, and they wouldn't give me any assistance because I didn't have a job.
Right.
So
and so it is, because it's almost a catch-22. And then if you do get a job and they say, well, you know what, nope, that's making too much, now we're still not going to assist you. It just seems like it could be written more in a supportive way than it is. In some respects, sometimes instead of support, you almost feel degraded.
Oh, a lot, because every time you go up there to get interviewed, they can tear you all apart.
Right.
It's just ridiculous.
And the funny thing about that is the folks that are sitting in those chairs doing those interviews, they're only one paycheck away from being in on it themselves.
Oh, my God. That is one part that was in my book. And one of the characters told this to this woman. And in my second book, it just so happens, one of the interviewers is trying to get help from the system. It's just, the second book, this is a whole different thing.
Well, it is. And what I find, I think back to the degrading piece, and what I find annoying is a lot of those people, they will, like I said, first off, they're only one paycheck away from it themselves. Just like right now, I'm one paycheck away from it myself. But they will give you this attitude as if they're looking down on you.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot. There's just one character, and she really had to light into the interviewer because she was just trying to degrade her.
Right.
And had to tell her, you won't have a job without these people who need your assistance, so why are you being so horrible?
That's absolutely right. I mean, it is to go in any of those federal offices or government offices, and you go, their job is to help. That's what their job is. Their job is to help. But they come at you as if they don't want to work, like you're bothering me, and don't dare get there like a half hour or so or 15 minutes before 4:30 or closing time. Oh my goodness! I mean, everything just stops. It stops an hour before. If you're supposed to.
I've had someone tell me who was an interviewer who told me that if they decided they don't want to do a person, they would just throw their applications away.
See, listen to all that nonsense. And this is an agency that's supposed to be helping. So that's interesting that wound up coming up as a concept for a book as well. Because I've done the show 12, 13 years now, and it always fascinates me as to where the authors get their concepts from for a story. So when you write a story like The Perfect Solution or the one that we were just speaking of, what is it, Ladies on the Hill? Women on the Hill?
Women on the Hill, yes.
Women on the Hill. Who is your target audience? Who do you have in mind when you're writing that's going to be the reader?
Those who think they know so much. I mean, because we who've been through it, we already know, but those who think they know so much learn a lot.
Right.
Especially if you make it fiction, they think, that it's not all, they can take it in better if they know it's fiction.
Well, you're right. And I've said this many times here behind this microphone. For many people, I mean, we really do like stories. I mean, you can teach a child and an adult better with stories than you can sometimes just straight up facts.
Yes. I have, like the history book. So all last month, and right now I'm doing women on it. I'm celebrating women because it's March. There have been people who tell me they never knew this. They didn't learn about this person in history or that person in history because, that a lot of people just aren't written about. It's just common people who have done things.
That's right.
And you never hear nothing about. I do have a book called The Fishing Trip, and it's about a guy who was molested when he was young. the entire town was just filled with pedophiles, and the government and everybody just basically were just pedophiles. And he goes back and he revenges and does retribution and tries to save some children who's still there. And that's all from, listening to the news of these pedophiles. Some of them get away with, killing children. They don't get enough time. And in my opinion is, if you're raping children and, abusing people all the time, why do you get the chance to go to court? Especially if you've killed these child. Why do they get to go to court?
Especially when there's without a shadow of a doubt that it's that person. Now, it's one thing if you're a little unsure, but it's another thing whenever you've caught the person dead in the act. You know exact that there is no reasonable doubt. And I tend to agree with you. It's like, why go through all that process for somebody that you know that did it? That's another one of those, like, to me, and I hear where you're coming from, weird type of rules, but I guess, everybody's entitled to the due process. But the thing is, they're all going to go into court and say, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
They're going to all go in there and plead not guilty, because really they don't have anything to lose. They're going to go in there and plead insanity. They're going to plead crazy, or they're going to plead some kind of sob story of when they were kids and this, that, and the other. They're going to go in there and do all of that. But the bottom line is, you've either damaged somebody for the rest of their life or either killed them. And
you try to make, especially if the child is 13 or whatever, and you try to make that child the bad person.
Right.
Stop. So that's this guy's thing in his story. Oh, and he has a little girl, a woman that works with him. She might pose as a teenager and lures these pedophiles in, and they just handle it.
It's and what's the title of that book?
It's called The Fishing Trip.
All right. That's what you just said, The Fishing Trip. We're going to see it again. And maybe it still comes out every now and again on NBC. I think it was NBC. One of the stations, they would do like a whole hour profile on setting up these pedophiles. Mm-hmm. And it would be really interesting for the host of the show. I mean, they would set these guys up. They had the cameras and everything, their police and everything waiting. And they would they would lure them in. They would now do the reverse. They would pretend like they were a child. And the person on the other end thought it was a kid. And as it turns out, it was the police. And NBC had the cameras and everything. But it's amazing who they would catch in their net. Yes.
And this book, my publisher hasn't published it yet. She says it scares her a little. I'm so tickled every time she tells me that. But, he would, they lure the people in, and because they had, like, he was in foster care, and they had this whole family who had these beautiful little houses, and they just take these children in, and that's basically what they did. Just abuse children.
And we'll be talking the rest of the day on that topic and stuff because, again, everybody thinks in these high power or high society areas, these suburbs, that everything is always like, but you have no idea what's being hidden in these suburbs. And, certainly, because we just had a case up here in like one of our top suburbs in the state of New Jersey where they found out it was a major drug dealer working out of there. And, of course, you get everybody, we didn't think that could happen here. Oh, that's why we moved here out of the city. And, we didn't expect that here. Yeah, you see, that's the problem.
That's here in Houston. And, the body trafficking, with these putting people in houses, and it's all in Houston. Every time you turn around, you see something.
It is, and I declare the media and the newscasters. I don't know how many people they interview and what they decide which clip they're going to put on the air, but without fail, they always put someone standing on there talking about, we didn't think that could happen here, or I'm shocked that happened here. Well, what makes your community any different from anywhere else in the world? That's always kind of like my question. Do you think because you have a little bit of money, or you think because the houses are nice that these things are not going on?
That's it. Or you think you're the wrong color? Come on.
Right. I mean, I'm literally this week, and they had the person, they had the guy. It was a grown man. And he had a son or daughter, whatever it was. As a matter of fact, I think it was a daughter, and I think she was like 13, 14. I think she was a part of the scheme, part of the drug dealing thing. And so yeah, it's turned out to be a big mess. And you know, if you Google Upper Saddle River and probably put in heroin or something like that, the story will probably pop. But they're always, again, looking the nose down on the urban areas or on the cities, when the fact of the matter is, in these posh communities, these things are going on as well.
Yes, exactly.
So I'll tell you what, we need to share some more information, and then I'll tell you the hour goes very quickly. We got about 15 more minutes left, and it goes very quickly. So those of you in the listening audience, again, let somebody know they can catch E for the last 15 minutes. I hope you've been with us since 6, but if you haven't and you've just joined us, share it with somebody else. Tell them to join us as well.
Hi, my name is Stan Myers, and I'm here at FM 88.7. I do a jazz show called Just a Mood, and if you like the music, anything from Louis to Lester Bowie, I'm your man. That's Sunday afternoons, 3 to 6. Looking to hear from you, okay?
Speaking of jazz, that's what you're hearing in the background right now. As a matter of fact, this song is Pumpkin Soup. Matter of fact, I had some pumpkin soup last night, and it was good too. And if it ain't left over, I'm probably going to have some more again today. My wife makes a mean pumpkin soup. But I tell you what, did you know that car crashes are the #1 cause of teen deaths, and that half of all teens that die in a car crash? So when you are with a friend and they are driving recklessly, say something, anything. This has been a public service message from the Ad Council, speakuporelse.com, and your friends right here at WP 88.7 FM, Brave New Radio. I tell you, like I just told you a second ago, my wife makes a mean pumpkin soup. That's where the title of that song came from. That's why it was titled Pumpkin Soup, was after one of her soups. So just a little bit of trivia there. But my guest this morning is E. Wade, and we're having a fascinating conversation in terms of her storylines. And the storylines, even though they are fiction, they happen in reality. One of my favorite TV shows is Boston Public. It's no longer on the air. And people would tell me, oh, that show is exaggerated. Those things wouldn't really happen in a school. And my response is always, actually, the show is understated. Everything that happens in that show happens in a school and then some. And so E's books are fiction, but the things that she's writing about, they really do happen. And the good thing about it is, like you said earlier, if someone were to read your stories, it would make them. That's funny that you said the publisher, the one that you're ready to release, says, this scares me. And so for somebody who reads something, they should be able to learn and be able to, if they have children or work with kids or have, family members, look, this is a story, but this could happen. We need to be careful, because a lot of times we have people that really feel like this can't happen to me.
Yes. The perfect solution, someone just read, is someone from Uplifting Family. She just read it, and then she did a little review, and then she turned around and she said, I had to write a post and tell people what to look for in daycares so they can make sure to pick up the right daycare. When I published that book, as a matter of fact, one of the daycares in town took it and implemented some of the suggestions I had in there into her daycare, of things of how to watch the kids and people who come in, because they get, in a public system, they get so free and just let anything can happen. It used to make me nervous, working in the back of a building and people just letting people in the front.
Wow.
And, even with the doorbells, people just tend to let somebody's ringing the bells, you just open the door, and I'm like,
right. I mean, and again, as I said a couple of minutes ago, it's not that I'm looking for something to happen, but I'm always on my guard to think what could happen. And as an educator, like you said, if you're working in a daycare center or a school or something, you always have to think of the worst scenario and always be able to, okay, if this happened, what am I going to do? You need to be able to be prepared in your mind to react.
And as a parent, you should have that in your mind. Because with my first daughter, I was walking her to the store, and she was like 2 years old, little bitty kid, eating her chips, and then we would walk to the local store, and my arms was full of bags, and she's just walking beside me, and I saw a friend, a cousin's boyfriend coming, and we spoke and everything, and as he passed me by, he just picked up the child and kept on walking, and I was like, what? And he was acting like a joke and everything, but let me tell you, after that, she wore a harness. They wore harnesses, and you can walk if you want, but you're still tied to me.
That's right.
People would talk about me, but I didn't play anymore.
Well, there is no such thing as being too careful or being too safe. And as that old adage says, I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yes.
Because 2014, I mean, each year seems like we get crazier and crazier in terms of events that happen. I mean, when you look at the news, I rarely look at the news now because, first off, every day it's the same old stories: who killed who, shot who, raped who, this, that, and the other. So it's almost like the same story, different names, different faces, different places. So I really don't watch it too much, but just enough to kind of keep up. And then on the social media, like when I go through Twitter or something like that, that kind of keeps me up on what's going on. But these things are happening. When you start talking school shootings, shootings on campuses, shootings in McDonald's, shootings, I mean, just recently with this plane thing. When have you ever heard of a jumbo jet disappearing that you can't find for 8, 9, 10 days?
The first thing came to my mind, somebody took that plane. Stop. Y'all know that. Just go out and say somebody took the plane. And now what are they saying?
I was watching it very quickly last night, and it was something like they think they found it, or they thought they heard something on the bottom of the ocean floor, somewhere close to Malaysia or somewhere close to, but every report says the plane took a different turn than what it was on course to take. So, if we find out that somebody took that plane, I wouldn't be surprised. But even that would be a storyline. I mean, a plane missing for that long, that large of an object with that many people that no one on the planet can find.
Or no one's saying anything.
Right. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of strange things going on. So the books may be fiction. I would almost want to call them faction. They have facts and fiction combined there. These are some things that really could happen. And it's funny with the kids, because you just heard me read the PSA about, the number one car crashes and teen death. Mm-hmm. Like I said, and it's, I guess it's folly, youth, silliness, or whatever. But, the younger you are, the less you think anything can happen to you. And in 2014, it is the reverse. I mean, something, regardless of if you're a teen, a kid, or whatever, or like you said, a 3-year-old being stalked, that could happen.
Yes, it could. It could. I told my daughter, I'm just, not just because I'm the lovey, but this little fellow is cute. And I tell my daughter, you need to put a harness on that boy. Especially when he was a baby. And he's a lighter skinned than she is. He looks like, he looks like a little white boy.
Right.
And they used to follow us in the store, thinking we took this baby. And he's a really cute little guy. And I tell her, you need to put on. And now he's 3. And he goes to anybody who says hello to him.
Right.
And he just talks and everything. And I'm like, girl, because they wouldn't even believe he was yours.
Right. Right.
So,
So your latest work is Tripping Prince Charming. Now, what is that all about? This is the latest one that you have out now, is Tripping Prince Charming? Yes,
because I wrote a few of the books, and they were all kind of like the publishers, a little dark, a little somber. So this one is just a romance. I haven't really wrote a romance before. And it's a 3-story romance into one. And it's like each person has their little saying in it. I guess it's acts and scenes. Act 1, that's this person. And, act 1, scene 1, and that's all these. It's kind of like a play or story inside of a book.
And where did the ideas from this, or where did the concept come from this one?
I was trying to get write for this Christian company, and to write for them, you had to have 3 books, in a series. And as I was trying to write it, you had to be too clean. Their rules are, the way they can touch or the way they can speak to each other. There's so many rules on being a Christian writer that it's unbelievable. You can't be that clean and be human.
Right.
And it's not even to do with sex. It's the way the person kissed him on the face. It's just so many rules they had.
Well, it's funny because I've interviewed many Christian authors, and a lot of times, and most of them are self-published, and in many cases they'll have a sex scene or more than one sex scene in it because it's a part of life. So they'll have, I mean, right, we're not talking pornography, we're not talking vulgarity, we're talking just the normal sex that's in life. And it's always interesting when they get into, like, how did their church members or their congregants or fellow people in the church, how did they react to it? And it's always interesting to get so many different reactions. Some people are like, it's part of life. Other people's acting as if, oh my God. But my question to that is always, well, then how did you get here? How did we get here then? If that's not a part of the story, how did any of us get here?
Because you can have what you call clean romance, because that's what Tripping Sick Charming is. They call it what they call it a sweet romance.
Right.
And but it wasn't sweet enough for that publishing company, and so I just took the 3 books, and I was going to write them like one full book, and then the other one, and then the other one, and just put them all in one because they weren't long.
Right.
And then that didn't work out because the characters weren't happy, and I had to just follow how they did it. And so this book is almost like a play in the book.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that was going to be, and we're getting down to the end, but my last question was going to be in terms of character development. How do you develop your characters? I mean, do you live with them? Do you eat with them? You sleep with them? They walk with you? They talk with you? How do you get them to be what you want them to be? Because I've heard every kind of which way of people of how they do that in terms of when their characters are coming to life.
Most of the time, they never do what I want. So I just write their life story, and that's it. That's it. I just write the way they want to be. In this one, they even have songs or certain music they like. So that's at the beginning of the chapter or beginning of the scene for each one. What's their songs that would make them want to be with that other character or whatever. And that's how that story is. And I do have a book that I had mentioned, and it's called DNA, Nothing Will Ever Be the Same. It's a teen DNA story. It's a little more than a teen story, but it's not a real adult story. And it has bullying and teen pregnancy and dysfunctional family. And it's a real good story, but again, I had to write it the way this character wanted to come out.
Okay, well, we're down to the last few minutes of the show. I always give this opportunity for you to promote. You can say anything except dollar figures, but in terms of anywhere you're going to be for book signings, how folks get a copy of your book, what stores they're available in, that you can do. So the last few minutes is dedicated to that. Any shout-outs you want to do? So really, at this point, the mic is yours.
Okay, so if you want to get my books, of course, they're in all of the online bookstores. Even, iTunes, and just look for E. Wade, and, the whole list of books will come out. You can go on my website, which is wade-enpublishing.com, and you could click on any of the pictures and go to my blogs or see who I am, and that's about it. And, just go on my webpage, my website, and you can just learn anything and everything you want to know about.
And remember, that's E-Y. That's not just the letter E. It's actually the letter E and Y together. It's an E. Wade. And again, the website is Wade dash, that's WADE dash INPUBLISHING.com. So it's Wade-inpublishing.com. And you can go there, and like she said, it'll take you everywhere you need to go in terms of all the books and the blogs and the photos, and everything is there. So and she's calling out of Houston, Texas. So even though it's almost 7 o'clock here, it's only almost 6 o'clock there. So she's an hour behind us in Central Time. So I am thrilled that you did rise early and you called in. And actually called in about 5-10 minutes early. So I know it's early out there in Houston. If you want, you can get a chance to go back to sleep. I always tease people that are calling me from different time zones. I say, you can do the interview in your pajamas. And
yes.
It's not like you have to.
I love phone interviews.
You don't have to get up, get dressed, get all dolled up, makeup and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to come into the studio. You can just kind of like wake up, roll over, and kind of pick up the telephone. And
yeah, the alarm goes off. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And see, good thing about the web streaming and the webcasting is, like right now it's 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock with you, but it's 1 or 2 o'clock overseas, over in Europe, over in France, so in their time it's like around midday. So those that are listening over there, it's in the middle of the day for them. And then we have folks that are like 14, 15 hours ahead. It's like 9, 10 o'clock at night for them. So they're listening at night. So we're hitting all different time zones all over the world, and that's a good thing. So it's early for us, but for some people, it's right in their main time of the day. Well, is 7 o'clock, and I thank you so much. I believe everything it's doing what it's supposed to do, and if that's the case, I will email you an MP3 link that you can use on your website or wherever you'd like to share it with as a copy of the interview this morning, and you can do whatever you'd like to do with it. I usually send it out.
I did download your app, too.
Oh, thank you. I am. So you're one of the 38.
Cool. Yes, I am. And I really like that app because I said, oh, look, there I am.
Well, thank you. Matter of fact, last night I updated the schedule because there were some schedule changes in there. I hadn't done the update, so last night I updated that, so the schedule is current. And if it changes again, I'll do that. And also I'll add the pictures for the last few weeks. It's funny, my guest last week said, when do you put the pictures up of people that's been on the show? I said, I usually do 4 or 5 at a time. So I'm getting...
How can I make money in the music business? Why copyright?
Should I make a CD anymore?
Trying to break into the music and entertainment biz? Wondering how the business works? Wondering how guys like Elton John and MC Hammer go bankrupt?
Why am I not making...